Hello, comrades, and welcome back to another episode of Ushanka Show, stories about life in the Soviet Union. My name is Sergey, and I was born in the USSR. Меня зовут Сергей, и я родился в Советском Союзе.
Again, the Soviet Union was a fucking shithole with a ton of lipstick on its ugly face. And the fact that you keep reposting this crap here doesn't serve you well. There are a lot of crappy places in the US. You're right, but the USSR was a shithole with a handful of nice places instead. I know you're trying to monetize the excitement naive Americans experience towards the fucking Soviet Union, but deep inside, even you know that you're lying. You can bullshit the hell out of some very naive Americans, but I can see it for what it is. The propaganda bullshit. Shame on you.
And I want to thank MC Lucia from Finland for this awesome voiceover. Thank you, Lucia. So today we're going to talk some more about Boris Yeltsin's visit to the American grocery store back in September of 1989, the event that happened back in Clear Lake, Texas. And once again, I would like to thank you, my subscriber Jose, who was very kind to visit that store and record the video. And also he brought to my attention that interesting event of a Yeltsin visit. I didn't know about it, so thank you so much, Jose. But before we begin, I would like to reply to several comments about me calling Boris Yeltsin a Soviet leader, and they claim that he was not a Soviet leader. So I just want to make sure we understand each other. I didn't call Yeltsin leader of the Soviet Union. I call him Soviet leader. You don't need to be a top dog to be called a dog. And Yeltsin, since 1978, was first secretary of the party committee in Sverdlovsk region, so he was way up there in nomenclatura party ranks, so I think it's totally correct to call him a Soviet leader or one of the Soviet leaders. And while we're on the topic of the Soviet leaders, pop quiz time. So I would like you to answer, who was the president of the Soviet Union back in September of 1989? И правильный ответ, and correct answer is, if you said this Mikhail Gorbachev, you were wrong. Actually, that was a little bit tricky question because back in 1989, there was no such a position as a president of the Soviet Union. President of the Soviet Union, that position was created in March of 1990, so next year after 1989, and Mikhail Gorbachev became the first and the last president of the Soviet Union. And now back to our topic of Boris Yeltsin roaming the aisles of the Randall grocery store in Clear Lake, Texas. First of all, Boris Yeltsin's visit to the United States in September of 1989 was kind of strange. It wasn't really like an official visit, but wasn't really private. He managed to get only 1 week visa to visit the United States. They tried to get 2 weeks, but American embassy allowed them to go to America only for 1 week. So the small Russian delegation with Boris Yeltsin, they visited New York City, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Dallas, and then they flew on a private jet of American millionaire to Houston, Texas. When I read about private jet and American millionaire providing this private jet, I got really curious, so I started digging into who the hell was this millionaire Andreas that they mentioned in this Russian article. And actually, the guy's name was Dwayne Andreas, and he was CEO of Archer's Daniels Midland, company known as ADM. I don't know if you ever heard of ADM, Archer's Daniels Midland, but it's one of the largest corporations in the world. They're in business of agriculture products, mostly soybeans, processing, buying, selling. And Dwayne Andreas, farmer's son, a college dropout, he's the one who turned that little company from Minnesota into the world giant. So when I was researching this guy, I came up with this interesting expression that in modern farming, government is important as weather. So while ADM was processing food, our friend Dwayne Andreas was cultivating governments. Not just American government, but government officials all over the world. This old-timer who passed away back in 2016 at the age of 98 met Stalin and sold him 150,000 tons of vegetables oil. Our friend also met Spanish dictator Franco and touted him on the glories of soybean oil. He also somehow managed to take Fidel Castro to dinner in New York City, also probably trying to sell them some food items. And check this out, Dwayne Andreas was the guy who purchased Jimmy Carter's peanut warehouse when Carter became a president. He even managed to broker a meeting between Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev and probably sold some grains to the Soviet Union. So that's the guy who provided a private jet for Boris Yeltsin during his visit in the United States back in September of 1989. And by the way, I also found out that ADM corporate jet was the only unescorted American aircraft ever permitted in Soviet space during the Cold War, and it could be flying around being unescorted. So ADM's corporate jet took Boris Yeltsin to Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, and after they were done with that visit, on the way back to the airport, they had some spare time. So that's when Boris Yeltsin suggested, hey, what about if we visit a local grocery store? You see, Yeltsin, being a big party boss back from the late 70s, by 1980 he developed this habit of showing up unannounced at the factories or stores. He preferred that way so people are not prepared, so he could see what's going on for real. So now we have to pause and have a lesson of Russian language. Урок русского языка. It's actually more like a lesson of the Soviet language, not Russian language. So we had this word показуха. Показуха. And I believe I already talked about it before. So that's what you do to show off when the big boss shows up. So doing показуха is something similar to what the Americans say polishing a turd, to make things more attractive, to make it shine again. So quite often those things are happening in Army or Navy. They polish the turds before Admiral shows up at the air carrier and stuff like that. So extreme cases of показуха or polishing the turd will be so-called Potemkin villages. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. During Catherine the Great rule, Potemkin her lover, and he was like almost like vice president, I would say. She was traveling down to Crimea, I believe. So Potemkin created this fake village fronts. So it looks like villages, but there was nothing, just it looked like buildings, but not actually buildings. And that was so-called Potemkin villages. Something that was just to show the queen, and they'll be gone. Another example of extreme показуха or Potemkin village would be Stalin villages. Kind of similar. I read about it. I didn't research the topic in depth, but apparently in the 30s, there were specific villages created for the foreign journalists to show successes of socialist economy under Stalin. I don't know much about it, but I read in some books that was going on. So Potemkin villages, Stalin villages, показуха, polishing a turd. It's very important for you guys to understand this concept of показуха, because Boris Yeltsin was a professional politician and professional Communist Party leader, so he knew how those things worked back in the Soviet Union. You know, you call and say, hey, this big party boss coming to your village in 2 weeks. Let me know if you need anything. And there'll be this huge hustle to make the village look as pretty as possible. They'll maybe even put the brand new road, paint the houses. So Yeltsin knew that if he ever gives a advance notice about visiting any place, he would never see what's going on for real. So once again, a little bit off the topic, but I want to give you an example of extreme показуха in my hometown of Kiev. I don't know if you're aware, but Richard Nixon, American president, visited my hometown. He visited Kiev in May of 1972. And Ukrainians are so thankful for that visit because right before Nixon arrival to Kiev, Ukrainian government built this beautiful 4-lane highway connecting Borispol airport and Kiev. It was nothing like that in Ukraine ever to have a 4-lane like American-style highway, but because of the Nixon visit, we got it. And while planning a Nixon visit in Kiev, they also figure out the route they're going to take him around the city. And in one area around Artyom Street and Большая Zhytomyrskaya Street, there were several ugly, really old 19th century two-story homes. So guess what? Overnight, they demolished 6 homes prior, moving people out and their belongings and giving them brand new apartments in the modern homes. So they removed all the trash, brought the blacktop, brought the topsoil, and planted bushes. So since then, we have so-called miniature Nixon parks in Kiev in the place of those old, dilapidated 19th century homes. They disappeared overnight just because of the Nixon visit. So I want you to understand how important was Pokazuha for the Soviet leadership. I mean, building a brand new highway just to show off. So Boris Yeltsin knew all that, and he knew the game. So this is why it was very important for him to show up in American supermarket unannounced. So he will see for real how Americans are shopping for groceries and what kind of selection of goods they have. Just recently, I made a video about difference in supplies for like large cities like Moscow. So the grocery stores in Moscow have a way better selection of goods than some small town grocery store. So they had a similar expectation because this is like a small town, it's not New York, so this is like boondocks type grocery store. So that's another reason why they were so shocked. First of all, they showed up unannounced, so there was no chance for American Pokazuha. And secondary, there was some provincial small grocery store. So this is why they were so shocked. It's just they had that Soviet mentality and Soviet expectations. So one of the Russian guys that went together with Boris Yeltsin, he also was a party official. He wrote a book about that visit to America, and he mentioned that the first expectation, they thought they're going to see some lines of people inside of the grocery store. Outside, as nothing like that was going on. They were really impressed how bright lights were and how colorful and pretty everything was inside, including fresh cut flowers. So when they walked in, and it was a Randall's grocery store, they asked for the store manager, and there was this young, attractive guy in a white shirt that, of course, was smiling. This is the words I'm reading off this book. And the main question they had, Boris Yeltsin had, like, how many different items you have, like different kinds, articles, I think is the word, right? And they said in our grocery store we have about 30,000 different items we sell. And Yeltsin's like, wait a minute. He asked the translator again, can you repeat the number? I think you translated the wrong number. And he repeated, yes, it's 30,000 different items for sale in our provincial grocery store. And of course, it went downhill from there. They were just basically shell-shocked, walking through the store, see for all the varieties. And he says, you wouldn't believe how many kinds of different cheeses we saw, how many kinds of different sausages. He says, like, that was just insane. And Yeltsin even mentioned, even Politburo members don't have such a great choice. And they have the special stores. Not even Mr. Gorbachev have such choice in grocery items like you guys have here in this provincial grocery store. And this guy was saying that periodically I was taking a look at Yeltsin and I noticed how he was having a really hard time processing. He was enjoying himself and enjoying that store, but at the same time was a really shocking for him to see all this abundance, because as being as a communist and working towards communism, working towards that red plenty, when we have enough of everything for everyone, he comes to this little, not the little, but just like middle of nowhere grocery store in America, and he sees this is what the communism that we're trying to create in the Soviet Union here in America, they already have it. It's only difference you have to buy it. Apparently, Yeltsin even started talking. I mean, he didn't speak any English, so through translator, there was a lady with a shopping cart with the little boy, so he started asking questions like, hey, how often do you visit this grocery store? And apparently only on Saturdays. Remember, in Soviet Union, you had to go to the grocery stores every day so you can have a chance to buy something, because one day there'll be butter, next there'll be no butter. So to find out that you go to the stores only on Saturdays, it was already like, what? They asked, how big is your family? She said, me, my husband, and a kid. What about your income? And she said, well, I don't work right now. I only live on the salary of my husband, and he's making $3,600 a month. And we asked, how much do you pay for groceries? She said, we spend about $170 a week, so from Saturday to Saturday, on groceries. So all those information was just overwhelming for Comrade Yeltsin. Then this guy continues, in the vegetable section, we were shocked with the quality of produce. And I was telling you, like, Soviet овощи, фрукты stores, so vegetables and fruits, it was sad stuff. And here it says, we saw radishes of the size of the large potatoes. So our Soviet potatoes were so tiny that American radishes look like large potatoes. And then talking about these little showers that spray water, and here's the onions, and here's the garlic, and tomatoes, and cucumbers, and cabbages, and it's like, oh my goodness. And then on the way out of the store, they stopped by the cash register, and once again, it's like, yeah, by the exit, there's a girl, and she doesn't calculate anything. Remember, we use that baskets at our stores that people will be calculating total purchases. She just had a little device in her hand that looked like a hair blower, fan to dry your hair, and she's quickly just scanning the prices on the packaging, and the computer calculates everything. You pay and you're out of the way. Is that what could be more simple and more smart than such a system? So when they left and got back on a jet plane again, and they flew to Florida to stay with this Andreas guy at his Miami condo, he said Boris Yeltsin looked really weird. He was just sitting quietly, had his head covered with his hands, and you could tell he has like this inner struggle. He just got really depressed, and said, yeah, we heard stories about some people who, after coming back from the trips abroad, and remember that story about tourists travel in Western Europe, after coming back to Soviet Union, they were like deeply depressed because they saw different life, and they maybe realized that my life could be so much different and so much better if I wouldn't be born in the Soviet Union, but would be born like in Germany or in America. And then when Boris Yeltsin started talking, he started talking anti-Soviet propaganda. He basically was just like, our poor people, наш бедный народ, all life we were telling them fairy tales, promising something, trying to invent something new, but everything else, everything already invented in the world, everything is for people here. It's just only us do this struggle for nothing and hurting everyone. And then he added, and that's pretty much kind of like the most important part of all this grocery store visit by Yeltsin. He says, it's quite possible that it's after this Houston, after that visit to the grocery store on this jet plane of the American millionaire, Yeltsin, it was his final straw and the last support for his Bolshevik mentality collapsed. And it was probably, that's when he made decision to abandon Communist Party, because he quit Communist Party and start his struggle to become the president of Russia. So it's quite impressive stuff. Visit to some regular Randall's grocery store in Clear Lake, Texas, shouted Boris Yeltsin, the future president of Russia, shouted his views of communism, and only 2 years later he left Communist Party. And if you read my book, American Diaries 1995, I express quite similar views when I first time visited American supermarkets here in Michigan. There was Myers, and that was quite a shock. I spent a lot of time just ogling, I think is the word, not Googling, ogling at the alcohol department, just being astonished how much different type of alcohol available. And then of course fresh produce was a shock for any Soviet consumer, except I was kind of disappointed because I discovered that quite often tomatoes, strawberries, dill, they look good but they didn't taste good, like if they shipped from Florida or those items shipped from California, like strawberries, they pick them green, then they make them ripe, applying specific gases, so it's all look good, but it was no good taste, but it looked good. Okay, my friends, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I truly hope you learned something new. That's all what Ushanka show is about, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания, goodbye. Don't forget to like this video and share with your friends. Is available at the Ushanka store at teespring.com. Just a friendly reminder that my book American Diaries is available on amazon.com, or shoot me an email if you would like to have a signed copy. Thank you. And if you love my channel and would like to show your support, please click on the link below this video and become the patron of the Ushanka Show. For as little as $1, you can help us grow and create the new interesting videos about the life and soul.